everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on Facebook, Twitch, and on X. I am Bryson Carver. It is fantastic to be with you on this Monday of Super Bowl week. Got tons to talk about with regards to the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold, I've been thinking about it over the weekend. We obviously didn't do a show on Friday, so I've been thinking about it over the last few days. I think people are kind of still blowing out of proportion or are still holding on to an old narrative about Sam that I don't think necessarily applies to Super Bowl 60, which of course will be played about 6 days from now against the Patriots. Talk about that. Klint Kubiak has been hired by the Las Vegas Raiders. Not gonna lie, kind of like it. And I think the Vegas Raiders are in a position better than they've been in the last 2 decades. Discuss that in about 30 minutes of the show. LeBron is an all-star. There's some, not that many, thankfully, but there's some out there. How could LeBron be an all-star for Kawhi Leonard? I'll explain exactly why, and it's quite simple. Explain that later in about 40 minutes or so. At the end of the show, it feels like it's become a tale as old as time when it pertains to hiring cycles in the NFL. We had 10 openings. Not one single black coach got a job. We have 3 left in the entire NFL in totality. Get to that later on today's show. But first, of course, given that we're starting Super Bowl week, we might as well start with the NBA trade deadline. Giannis watch here on Carving Up Live. So here's what we have, is that it has been widely reported, multiple sources, Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, who we're going to quote throughout this segment, being one of these individuals, saying a deal is unlikely to get done between the Bucks trading Giannis to the Warriors, to teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Knicks. We'll get to them a little bit later in the segment. Miami Heat. A deal's probably not going to happen until at the earliest Wednesday night. Now, again, for context, Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's the deadline. So this could be a situation. Remember when Kevin Durant a few years ago was dealt kind of out of nowhere from the Brooklyn Nets to the Phoenix Suns? I think that was like it was like maybe 1 a.m. On the day of the trade deadline. It kind of just happened in the middle of the night. Everyone woke up to it. It could be a situation like that. So that's the latest we have. We also have Brian Windhorst went on ESPN today, said, hey, the Knicks are out, at least for the trade deadline, because we know it's on the board that Giannis ends up staying in Milwaukee and gets dealt in the offseason. We know he's not going to be a Buck in 2026, 2027. That we do know. It's just a matter of whether he gets dealt this week or this summer. As of right now, the Knicks are out of that. According to Wendy, the Knicks like where they're at. They like the team they've got going. They obviously beat the Lakers last night. I think they've won 5 or 6 games in a row. They're playing good basketball. They feel like, along with Detroit, the clear-cut favorites in the East, especially now that Jason Tatum is probably not coming back with Boston, nor should he. Don't rush an Achilles. They feel good about their chances, as they should. So it really comes down to a few teams. Minnesota, who has no picks. They'd have to get multiple other teams involved. I imagine Rudy Gobert would be part of that deal. Like, if that's the centerpiece of a deal to acquire Giannis and Antetokounmpo, I mean, you'd have to get an East team involved, I'd imagine, if you're going to supply, you'd be able to supply the picks to Milwaukee, because a Western Conference team is not going to help Minnesota, who's obviously in championship contention, having made the last 2 Western Conference finals. So I think Minnesota, if we get the news from Shams or Chris Haynes or anybody, Giannis Antetokounmpo has been traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves, I would be utterly floored, because I just don't think they have the assets without getting multiple other teams involved. To me, it comes down to 2, Miami Heat and the Golden State Warriors. So with Miami, a hypothetical deal would go as follows. So obviously, Giannis to the Miami Heat. The Bucks would get Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, Terry Rozier, potentially another young player, maybe a Hawkins or something like that. From there, 2026 first-round pick swap. The same could be said about 2029, 2030 first-round pick, 2031 first-round pick swap, and a 2032 first-round pick. So Miami, the issue they find with them, the only untouchable guy in that roster is Bam Adebayo. You're not trading Bam. You trade Bam for Giannis, you're getting a much better version of Bam, but Bam's still an all-star caliber guy depending on the year. Which is why on Polymarket, on all of these gambling websites and apps, the Warriors, if Giannis gets dealt before Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Warriors are the runaway favorite to acquire him. So as some of you out there know, well, I mean, if we can just pan this camera up a little bit, you see Andre Iguodala's book, you see my Golden State Warriors ad. Diehard Warriors fan here. That goes without saying. But I've been let's put it this way over this weekend. Cautiously optimistic. Because on one hand, oh my God, Giannis. On the other hand, it's, okay, don't get your hopes up too high, because I go from, man, even if we get in the tournament, here we go, Steph, Jimmy, Draymond, had that group been healthy last year, I believe within my bones that they would have gotten to the Western Conference Finals and maybe further, because they had success with OKC the previous year, whatever. Jimmy goes down, and that's pretty much it. That it's a wrap on championship contention for the Warriors. So there's a bug in the studio. Goodness, maybe a lightning bug. Anyways, and now you could acquire Giannis, kind of to certainly to save this season and to give yourself an opportunity next year and maybe even the year after that to compete while Steph is still a great player, top 10 player in the league. So here's what we've got on that front. So Nick Friedel of ESPN, who's been great over the years, Nick Friedel has reported, because the whole dynamic is second apron, salaries have to match. We won't get in the minutiae of it. Point is, if the Warriors want to get Giannis, part of the deal to acquire Giannis has to be a player on their team whose salaries match what Giannis Antetokounmpo is making, upwards of $50 million. So the logical conclusion would be, well, I guess that means Jimmy's the odd man out. Jimmy Butler, who's making upwards of $60 million per season, big contract that he signed with Golden State after getting traded from the Miami Heat. Like, Jimmy's probably the odd man out. He's hurt. You want an opportunity to win now with Steph, Draymond, and Giannis. Nick Friedel reports the Warriors have communicated to Jimmy Butler that they fully intend to support him throughout his year-long rehabilitation. So, listen, things could change. We are less than 72 hours away from the deadline at the time of this show. Maybe that changes. Maybe Milwaukee draws the line in the sand. They're like, no, you have to give us Jimmy because we'd like to move Jimmy for more assets, which is why I think that would be the logical play for the Bucks. So barring that, and that could happen, but barring that, you're obviously not trading Steph. God knows you're not trading him. That means Draymond's the odd man out. Draymond, who's having, by the numbers and certainly by just the eye test, the on-court production, is not the same player that he once was. And again, he's in year 14, a guy who's not as athletically gifted as other players, of his age group. Draymond's not going to be that type of productive guy in 2026. And so that means the Warriors likely have to part ways, which to acquire Giannis, Draymond, listen, I have defended Draymond probably more than anybody in the podcast realm, national media, print, television, radio, all of it. But if the juice is no longer worth the squeeze, if you're becoming more of a headache now than you ever have been, and you're not matching that with the usual production, like that was always my defense of Draymond. It's like, yes, can he be a pain in the you-know-what? Yes, but he's still really, really important to the Warriors. He's by far their best defender. He initiates the offense. The mental telepathy that he and Steph has is, you can't teach that. That's acquired over a decade plus of playing together. That's not there anymore. He's turned the ball over at a higher rate. He's not the same defender. He's still really good, but not quite the same defender he once was. He's at best a net neutral, if not a net negative, for the Golden State Warriors in 2026. Well, Steph Curry, age 37, going on age 38, he's still averaging 27 a game. He's a freaking all-star starter. Like, we'll get it to the LeBron James story later. LeBron's the old guy. He's a starter. KD's an old guy. He's an all-star. Steph's an old guy. He's an all-star starter. And it's warranted. He's averaging 27 a game. He's having an excellent season. And then Brett Siegel comes out with a little interesting nugget. Draymond Green, so according to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, Draymond Green could be on board with a Giannis trade and then return to the Warriors this summer. This is what he says, quote, one rival executive who has dealt with the Warriors before in trade talks spoke with Clutch Points on Sunday and brought up the interesting scenario where Green himself could be on board with such a maneuver where he could be traded and return next season alongside Curry, Butler, and Antetokounmpo since he owns a $27.6 million player option. So Draymond, if Draymond gets dealt, he's probably not playing a single minute for the Bucks because the Bucks are trying to tank. Like, Draymond may not even move from the Bay Area. I think Andre Iguodala might have been in a similar situation. Andre got dealt in the 2019 offseason to the Memphis Grizzlies, never played a second for the Grizzlies. I don't even think he showed up to camp. Like, I think he still lived in the Bay Area and then ended up getting moved to Miami where he went to the finals. That could be what Draymond Green does. I'm staying in the Bay Area, not going anywhere. Bucks don't want my services on the court. I don't want to play for play meaningless basketball. Opt out of last year, my deal. Be a free agent. Come back to Golden State. And I think in that role, come off the bench potentially, I'd absolutely love to have Draymond back. Wouldn't mind to have Klay Thompson back in a similar kind of supporting cast role. I'm not sure they'd be able to make the money work. Regardless, the final point, Brett Siegel, clutch points. The Milwaukee Bucks are fascinated by the idea of acquiring all the Warriors' first-round picks and have yet to decline the Warriors' trade offer. By the way, Shams Charania has reported all day on ESPN, the Bucks have actually made counter offers. Which, what does that tell you? They want to deal Giannis. Giannis wants to go to a situation where he can compete, whether it's Golden State, the Miami Heat, the Minnesota Timberwolves. We thought the Knicks were in the race, at least this deadline. Probably not going to be the case. Wendy reported this morning the Knicks aren't interested. The Knicks like the team they've got. They don't want to break up what they got going. Fine. So it's Golden State, to me, is the clear front runner if Giannis gets dealt on Thursday. Miami's in second. Minnesota is a very distant third. I just don't see the scenario in which Minnesota acquires Giannis unless it comes in this offseason. Because they'd have to get multiple teams involved, multiple picks. I mean, again, Windhorst reported last week when this story first started to gain some steam, is that, there were folks out there suggesting like, well, the Warriors don't have assets. They all have, great players right now. Milwaukee doesn't want that. I mean, all you got to do is look at the standings of the Eastern Conference. Folks, the Milwaukee Bucks are not 4 games out of the playoffs. They're 4 games out of the play-in tournament. They've since been vastly surpassed by Charlotte, which, by the way, Charlotte playing good basketball right now, Concanapple, all those guys, really nice team they got going on there. Milwaukee's not going to sniffy play-in, so what are they going to want to do? Tank. Like, once Giannis is healthy, if Giannis does not get dealt at the deadline, he's not playing another second for the Bucks. They don't want to jeopardize draft positioning. This is a great NBA draft coming up this summer. They don't want to jeopardize that. They're going to sit Giannis for the rest of the year and deal him in the summer. Their mindset is, hey, let's just go and make the move now if that is the best move for us long-term, or wait till the offseason. But if you're the Golden State Warriors, we'll show the mock trade. Ignore the Jimmy Butler aspect of it. Obviously, Kuminga would be a part of the deal. Bobby Portis, I just put that in there just because salaries have to match. It's either going to be Portis or Kyle Kuzma. That's not the point. The point is the right column. Jimmy Butler, sub that out for Draymond Green. Jonathan Kuminga, multiple picks. And of course, you see 2030 is top 20 protected. My guess is the Golden State Warriors won't be a very good basketball team in 2030. And so that'll be a pretty good pick that Milwaukee would like to have to rebuild. Warriors have all their picks for the next few years. And those picks, once Steph's out of his prime, should be pretty high. And for Golden State, this is what you've been waiting for. You tried to go after Kevin Durant, and again, as my sources all but swore to me last year, the deal for Kevin Durant was in place. KD nixed it. He said, I want to go back to Golden State. Okay. Ends up getting dealt to Houston last summer. This is the moment you've been waiting for, Joe Lacob, to finally give Steph Curry, who got you a title in 2022 despite not having a championship roster. Klay was past his prime. Draymond was still impactful, although he had a god-awful finals until Game 6. And then obviously Wiggins stepped up. The rest of the guys were guys. I mean, it was, come on, Looney. Love Looney. Looney, Bielitsa, Jordan Poole. I mean, like, guys. You see what Jordan Poole's doing right now in New Orleans. Like, they can't wait to get him out of the building. You owe it to him, the greatest player in the history of your franchise, a guy who has been as loyal as any player really outside of Kobe to the Lakers, although Kobe, remember, asked for a trade mid-career. Tim Duncan to the Spurs, Dirk to the Mavs, you name it. You won't find many players in NBA history more loyal to one franchise than Steph Curry's been to the Warriors since 2009. You owe him. He's turned millionaires into billionaires. He's the reason you have that big shiny arena, which, by the way, has no home court. Has a minimal home court advantage compared to Oracle fans in San Francisco. I'm looking at y'all. Show up and support your team. Come on. The atmosphere in Golden State is not even a fraction of what it was at Oracle. You have an obligation to move heaven and earth to acquire this player. In his prime, still averaging 30 and 12 a game in his sleep. Still an elite defensive player. A pick and roll with him and Steph. Dear Lord, you want to talk about unstoppable. And we give you a chance, certainly to win now. But if the Warriors want to say, hey, let's include Draymond in a deal, and Draymond says, hey, I want to come back to you guys next summer, now you got a real shot in 2027. Kind of a last dance type of feel. Steph, Giannis, Draymond, Jimmy Butler. and the rest of the cast from there. So you'd have a shot this year, probably a better shot next year. Yo, Steph, that. All the great players want to do is compete for championships. Right now, Steph has no chance to do that. You acquire Giannis, instantly you do. So that's where that's the latest we have on the Giannis news and Giannis sweepstakes. So again, it's been widely reported. Whether it's true or not, we'll see. We'll obviously have a show on Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern. A deal is not likely to come until late Wednesday night, and then obviously up until the Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time deadline. Only time will tell. Only time will tell also if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl, which, of course, that will commence on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, Super Bowl 60, Patriots Seahawks. And I've been thinking the last few days about this whole Sam Darnold discussion. It's even been kind of a debate back and forth, like who's under more pressure, Drake May or Sam Darnold? We might even do a segment about that Wednesday, Friday, or a little bit of a preview. We're planning on doing a Super Bowl pregame show on Sunday, a few hours before the game. So stay tuned for some more announcements on that. But my quick response to that, and more so going toward the Darnold train of this, neither. Drake May's in year 2, and Sam Darnold was left for dead. Sam Darnold inherited the Jets franchise, which I've said it a million times on the show. I'll say it again. It is the franchise where all young quarterbacks' dreams go to die. See Geno Smith. Geno was able to revitalize his career briefly in Seattle before going to the wasteland that's been the Raiders. More on them in about 10 minutes. Then he had, obviously, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, heck, even old quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers. His dreams went to die. Blew his Achilles first season he was there. Next year, they were terrible, 5-12. Jets don't do anything right. Jets, Browns, I've said on the show, new rule. Like this, I've kind of talked about this with Salah with the Titans. Like I actually think the Salah hiring to the Tennessee Titans might work. If someone bombs, if talented people bomb in their first opportunity with the Cleveland Browns or with the New York Jets, blame the Browns or Jets. Now, if said player or coach bombs in their second opportunity, it's probably a mix of both. You can say, well, Sam Darnold was bad in Carolina. Sam Darnold had the Carolina Panthers in, I think it was 2022, playing in a Week 17 game at Tampa, at Tom Brady's house, Tom's final year. And if they won that game, they would have won the NFC South. Could have stolen the division from Brady his final year. So Sam wasn't bad in Carolina. He was 4-2 in his final 6 starts as a Panther. He wasn't awful. Then he's cast off, backs up Brock Purdy in San Francisco. It's like, okay, that's probably where Sam's career is going to go from here on out. Good backup quarterback, kind of like the Andy Dalton of the NFL. I'm not just saying that because he's a redhead who wears number 14. I'm saying that because, talented, now much bigger arm and more mobile than Andy, higher upside than Andy had coming out of TCU. But you can trust him to come in there, start 2 or 3 games if your starter goes down, and you don't have worries that he's going to just tear the house down. And then he ends up in Minnesota. As we saw, of course, over the weekend, the Vikings fired their general manager because the fact they've drafted a grand total of 0 Pro Bowlers in the last, I think it's 3-4 drafts. Let Sam Darnold out the back door. Let Daniel Jones out of the back door. Went with J.J. McCarthy, and that hasn't worked out so well. But still, the way Minnesota ended, Week 18, at one seed, division on the line, but 1 seed on the line. He's awful against the Detroit Lions. Terrible. Probably got Aaron Glenn the coaching job with the Jets because of how good of a job he did or how bad of a job Sam Darnold did, depending on your perspective. So you go into the playoffs as a 14-win wildcard team. But all's forgiven if you could just get us 1 playoff win, and you're even worse against the Los Angeles Rams. And so the Vikings say, yeah, we've already drafted quarterback in the first round with injury concerns, with upside concerns, frankly. But he's cheaper. Don't really want to pay Sam Darnold this offseason. We'll let him walk to Seattle, and what's the worst that could happen? He goes to the Super Bowl. He wins 14 games again. Doesn't really have to do much in that Niners game. We were looking at Sam Darnold. As a guy who, I'm not exactly as pro Sam Darnold as like Colin Cowherd, who's been a pro Sam guy from the jump. Kudos to him. But the biggest reason, even though I felt going into that game and all of the second half of the year, Seattle's better than the Rams, is... yeah, but if it comes down to quarterbacks, I'm sorry, I trust Stafford more than Darnold. And Stafford was still great. And Darnold outplayed him in the biggest game of his life. So with me mentioning all of that, it's the Super Bowl. Of course there's pressure. But I don't know how you could come out and say, gosh, man, if Darnold throws like 3 picks, I mean, he goes back to, there's seeing ghosts, Sam Darnold with the Jets. I mean, what do you expect? He's all of those monkeys are up. Anybody, find me the one person that was like, by Sam's second or third year in the league, man, if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, his career is a failure. Find that person. If you do, okay. Then outside of that, he's drastically outperformed expectations post-Jets and certainly post-Panthers. Backs up Purdy for a year in San Francisco. Shocks the world, winning 14 games as a legitimate MVP candidate last season. And then this season leads the, I don't want to say, I mean, you can say lead the Seahawks to the Super Bowl. We know the defense was the driving force of that team, but if Sam's not great against the Los Angeles Rams defense, they're not here. They're not playing on Sunday in San Francisco. So kudos to him. Like this, there's an element of he's playing with house money. I mean, Justin Jefferson was recently interviewed the other day. Justin Jefferson, superstar receiver for the Vikings. I feel bad for that guy, man. I finally got my long-term quarterback, and we let him go for a kid who can't play. Justin Jefferson is interviewed, and he's like, yeah, we probably would have won more games with Sam Darnold. So if Sam's bad in this game against New England, okay, I don't look at him any less as I do now. This is the classic, nothing to get, everything to gain, nothing to lose. I think Drake May, for different reasons, in the same position. It's like Drake's in year 2. Not to say, oh, he's guaranteed to get to another Super Bowl. We know Dan Marino didn't get to another Super Bowl after getting to one in year 2. Aaron Rodgers, his third year as a starter, gets the Super Bowl, never went to another one. So it's not guaranteed. But at the same time, this isn't the, can Josh Allen win the big game? Can Lamar Jackson come through? I don't think it's that situation at all. Like this is the classic, is there really much to lose for either squad type of Super? Of course, there's a lot to lose with the trophy, but more so external circumstances. Where we go into 2026, like, can they get over the hump? I don't feel that way. So, listen, I'm excited for this game. I'm genuinely surprised. And listen, I won't do my official pick until Friday because, frankly, I'm still undecided. But I'm really shocked at the amount of people who I genuinely respect their football acumen are like, God, yeah, Seattle's going to win by double digits. Like this isn't going to be like Super Bowl 48, Seattle over the Broncos 43-8. This isn't going to be last year's Super Bowl, Philly being up 34-0 on Kansas City. It's not going to be that, but they've got a much better team than New England. And I think they have a better roster than New England, but we've seen teams with better roster not win Super Bowls. It happens all the time. I mean, 2 years ago, I thought the Niners had a way better roster than Kansas City. Chiefs won because they had the better quarterback. Sometimes it comes down to those factors. So I'm excited. I can't wait. Whole thing. It's gonna be a blast. We're gonna take a quick break though. When we come back, Klint Kubiak, offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, who's helped Sam Darnold tremendously. He's been hired to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm sure my buddy Chris Mahi, shout out to Chris, is gonna be overjoyed at this segment. The Raiders are in the best spot they've been in a long, long time. Get to that in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live, folks. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on a Monday. So before we get to the Klint Kubiak story, like there's sort of this feel, I think at times for folks in my position doing podcasts or doing shows or whatnot, the NBA trade deadline's helped a little bit, but it's like, it's all just speculative talk before the Super Bowl. You gotta realize this week, first of all, again, the trade deadline, which headlines, in my mind, the second best player in basketball to Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo. You got that aspect of it. Tonight, you got Super Bowl media night. Super Bowl opening night at I don't know if it's going to be in Santa Clara or if it's going to be like in a facility nearby. Maybe it's the Chase Center. Who knows? You might get some fun sound bites from Seattle and from the New England Patriots. Maybe some big personalities show up and show in that spot. Those are always fun to see. You got tomorrow night. You got oh, that's right. No one cares about the Pro Bowl anymore. Listen, when Shedeur Sanders and Joe Flacco are in a Pro Bowl, that's when we know we got a problem. That's when Mac Jones makes one a few years ago, when Tyler Huntley makes it a couple of years ago. People forget this. Russell Wilson made the Pro Bowl last year. Like, it's not. We've known it's not the same Pro Bowl that we grew up with for a long time. And by the way, the only criticism I have of the Pro Bowl, I'm actually glad they went to the flag football format, but take it from somebody who for 2 months of their entire life officiated flag football games, intramural flag football games at my college. It's a great game. I wish the players, added a little bit more effort into that, because especially season's over. Now, again, you could still get hurt, even though it's not contact football. You could have a tissue, soft tissue injury. I get that. I'm excited to see at the Olympics in 2028 with flag football. We're sending some of our best NFL players, we're not sending them. It's in the United States. Sending them to the games, obviously. I do wish there was a greater sense of effort in the flag football aspect of it. But you got that. You got Hall of Fame, NFL honors. You got an MVP's going to be announced, Coach of the Year, all those things. Hall of Fame, which has generated a lot of controversy in the last week. We talked about that with Belichick. That's going to be announced officially on Thursday at the NFL honors. We know Belichick isn't in. The big deal made about that. Reports have circulated that Eli Manning, for the second time, isn't going to be in the Hall of Fame. I agree with that. I think Eli Manning's resume would tell you, very good quarterback, had 2 awesome runs. I think eventually he's going to get in. I thought last year if he got in first ballot, it would have been an absolute travesty. This year, I wouldn't have had a problem with it one way or the other. Next year, that feels about fair. 3rd or 4th year, Eli getting in the Hall of Fame, that feels fair. And of course, Friday, Super Bowl predictions. It's going to be a fun week. So definitely stay tuned to Carving Up Live throughout this week. And again, sort of a soft announcement, but we're going to kind of release more information as time goes on. Sunday afternoon, it's likely going to be at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. It's not set in stone just yet. Carving Up Super Bowl pregame show preceding Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara. Very, very excited about that. Going to have some guests on the show. Going to do some predictions, all types of different stuff. So very, very excited for you guys to tune into that. Back to today's scheduling programming, though. Klint Kubiak, offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, has been hired as the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and I really like it. I liked Klint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator for the Saints last year. I thought, by and large, listen, you're going to call plays for Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler. This is not a who's who of quarterbacks. Now you're in Seattle with Darnold and with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And you added Rashid Shaheed, and you already have guys like Cooper Kupp. Good running game with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet before he went down. Good O-line. Now that he's got a great group of cast to work with, now it's a different story. So now he goes to Vegas, and this is the first time in 20 years that we're going to be able to say this. The Raiders might very soon be a well-run franchise. I really mean that. Where it's, okay, we don't love Mark Davis in the ownership, but guess who's in the ownership now? The greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. So you imagine his input. Having Tom Brady's input certainly can't hurt your prospects. And we imagine the weak point of Vegas's overall football structure is the ownership group. Well, now Tom's in it, and he's been in it for about a year, but that changes everything. Now you hire smart offensive coach in Klint Kubiak. By and large, this Super Bowl is kind of a weird exception. It's our first defensive coach Super Bowl, all defense coach Super Bowl since Super Bowl 51, Patriots and Falcons. We remember that one well. Smart young offensive coach, and now you're going to have Fernando Mendoza coming into the organization in 2.5 months as the first overall pick. Where now it's a situation where, okay, really talented young quarterback with upside, smart coach with upside, and while we don't love ownership, Tom Brady's in it, so that can help. Not just in terms of Fernando Mendoza's development. I'm sure he'll work with Tom a little bit, if not a lot, but in terms of his football acumen and intellect and understanding of personnel. Tom's not the GM, but he'll have a say in personnel during the draft and what have you. So I see this and I'm like, I kind of like this. Okay, now you've got Brock Bowers to throw the football to. You've got Ashton Genty, who quietly had a solid rookie year. Got out of that offensive line. It's quite bad. The receiving core doesn't have a lot of depth. Like, listen, there's a reason the Raiders had the first overall pick. They were a bad football team this year and have been really since the Tuck Rule game, or not the Tuck Rule game, but the Super Bowl loss to Tampa back in 2002. So from that point on, I think they've only made the playoffs twice and haven't won any playoff games since then. So it's been a poorly run franchise for some talent. Al Davis at the end, Mark Davis for a long time. But now Brady's in the franchise. Now you got a smart coach with upside. Whereas last year, Pete Carroll, you thought maybe he could come in, set a culture. That didn't work. And then Antonio Pierce, the players liked him. Cool. That's about all. That's about all you could say in his favor to be a long-term option for the Raiders. Before that, it was Josh McDaniels, who's an amazing coordinator and not a very good head coach, as evidenced by his previous time in Denver. Like, it's a lot of guys. The John Gruden scandal. Then he had before that was Del Rio. Like, a lot of whiffs at the head coach. This is the first time they're bringing a guy where it's, okay, you could see him being the long-term option here. And so you combine that with now, hey, the Raiders are finally going to have potentially their franchise quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. Add Tom Brady to the mix in terms of ownership. I think the Raiders are a good draft away from being a 7 or 8 win team, which is a big accomplishment given the fact they had the first pick this year. So I saw this hire and I'm like, okay, that actually works. Look what he did with Sam Darnold. I thought some of his success at times with the Saints back in 2024, given the quarterback situation there, was something to pay attention to. So I'm excited to see what the Raiders do this year. I could see them potentially moving Max Crosby for more picks, give Max Crosby an opportunity to compete for a championship, put the Raiders in position. You know, they get at least 1, maybe 2 first-round picks to rebuild this whole thing. It's a good offensive line draft. Maybe they could use a pick from a Max Crosby trade to move up and get in one of the top tackles. So Vegas is in a good spot for the first time in a very long time. And all of a sudden, this AFC West division, it's like, hey, the Broncos, you don't imagine they're going anywhere. 14 wins. We'll see what happens when Bo Nix comes back next year. The Chargers got my with Justin Herbert in the postseason, but Jim Harbaugh's the head coach, and they brought in Mike McDaniel to call plays. That can't be a bad thing for a roster that's obviously excellent. They could add some pieces on the offensive side of the football. You've got the Raiders who could add Fernando Mendoza, who are going to add Fernando Mendoza rather, trade Max Crosby, get some picks. And oh, by the way, the team that's represented the AFC in 5 of the previous 6 Super Bowls prior to this year, they're not going anywhere either in the Kansas City Chiefs with Mahomes and Andy Reid. Shifting now to the NBA, back to the NBA, which we love to show off with the Giannis stuff. By and large, I haven't seen a ton of outrage over this, which is good. Usually anything involving LeBron James, there's the fake outrage. Like, I can't believe I'm outraged about this because LeBron's involved. And LeBron, for reasons I truly cannot explain, just triggers people in a way that is unexplainable. I mean, Taylor Swift has a similar effect. I'm not even I've said it on the show, not even like a crazy fan of Taylor Swift's music, but when people just lost their, when they'd show her for, I think, a combined 30 seconds during an NFL broadcast, it's like they're taking our football away from me. It's like they're still showing you the game, guys. Don't worry. LeBron has a similar effect. And last night on NBC, before the Lakers and Knicks Sunday night basketball game, Maria Taylor, Melo, I forget who else is on that pregame show. I think Vince Carter on the show? Yeah, the crew they have, and Tracy McGrady announced the Eastern Conference All-Star Reserves and the Western Conference All-Star Reserves. Now, of course, you get to the West, and it's like, is LeBron going to be in? And of course, Maria Taylor tried to kind of make it cinematic. I think it was McGrady who interjected, like, LeBron's in. Like, don't even make it a thing. LeBron James is an All-Star. So, first of all, this is the 22nd year that he has been an All-Star. And again, that is easily the longest, the most selections in NBA history. Kind of where people got like, I don't know about this, is Kawhi Leonard was the first name that came to mind as it pertains to potential snubs. And we could show you Kawhi has been better than LeBron this year. We have the graphic to prove it to you. So again, Kawhi is averaging more points a game than LeBron, more rebounds than LeBron. LeBron averages more assists. Kawhi averages more steals. Bron shoots a slightly better percentage from the field. Kawhi shoots a much better percentage from 3 and from the free throw line. So if the argument is Kawhi should have been an all-star, I completely agree. I along with others, have had issues with Kawhi as it pertains to availability, as it pertains to the Clippers have handed the keys to the franchise to him for 7 years and have gotten nothing out of it. One conference finals appearance that he wasn't even a part of in 2021. But based on his play, based on the fact that, hey, the Clippers have played good basketball as of late, winning 17 of their last 21 games, Kawhi should be an all-star. If the argument is Kawhi should be an all-star and LeBron James shouldn't be, that's absurd. If you're asking me who I think is the Western all-star that should have been left out for LeBron and Kawhi still could get in if someone, God forbid, gets hurt or pulls out. Kawhi could still be in the all-star game potentially, so it's not over. Danny Advia, who's a very good player, probably going to win Most Improved Player of the Year for the Portland Trail Blazers, a little bit of a free throw merchant, but either way, very, very talented young player, has not been better than Kawhi and LeBron James. The numbers would evidence that. But more than anything, anybody who has any sort of, oh my gosh, the more LeBron talks, the more I think this is his last year. And I'm not outright predicting that on the show. Listen, years ago, I called when I thought it was going to be Tom Brady's last year. When he retired after 2021, it was kind of clunky when Tom had some stuff going on in his personal life. Just all of the tea leaves were kind of, or all the writing was on the wall. Tom's not playing past this year in 2022, and he ended up retiring very shortly after that season. I'm not making that prediction with LeBron, but just in the last week, comes back to Cleveland. It's maybe his final game playing against the Cavs at, I forget the arena. I think it's Rocket Arena now or whatever it's called. Back in Cleveland, Ohio. They play the tribute video. Cleveland, this is for you. All that. And LeBron gets quite emotional. And listen, since he left Cleveland the second time in 2018, he's played there, what is this now, 8 years? I guess he's been on the road playing against the Cavaliers as an opponent in Cleveland 8 years in a row. I'm sure every single time he's come back, they played a very similar tribute video, showing him winning the championship in 2016, showing him winning MVPs when he was a younger player, the shot against Orlando and the buzzer beaters against the Pacers, or the Pacers once rather in Cleveland, and the Raptors and all of that. Genuinely moved to tears. You have that, and then you have when he's interviewed after the game, after the Lakers lost to the Knicks last night, potentially his final game at Madison Square Garden, he's like, yeah, it very well could be. Didn't say it was, didn't say it wasn't. Saying it could be. So it's at least a thought in LeBron's mind that he doesn't come back. My guess, if you had to hold me to it, I think LeBron probably ends up playing one more year for the Cavs. But here's what I will guarantee. LeBron won't be a Laker next year. Eventually it's time for two sides to part ways. This happens in life. Sometimes two people are good for each other for a period, not beyond that. That's LeBron. The Lakers needed it. Contrary to what Jeannie Buss allegedly believes or has said, LeBron sees himself as the savior. Well, you were the worst franchise in basketball, and within 2 years, he won you a championship. So that's pretty close to the basketball equivalent of savior. But now, with Luka, and listen, he's got his defensive issues. That goes without saying. You want to build around Luka Doncic, having LeBron James, who's a net negative at this point, I think it's fair to say, on the defensive end. And he's shooting 32% from three. Like a couple years ago, he was a 40% three-point shooter. Not the case this year. You want to surround Luke with shooters, guy who can work at a pick and roll. That's not LeBron James. LeBron wants to go where he has one more shot to be in contention, but also it kind of feels fitting. He needs to, listen, y'all know I'm not exactly pro Cleveland on this show, but he needs to finish with the Cavs. I'd love if he went to Golden State and played with Steph, but I think he needs to finish with the Cavs. And so all of that being said, that this still could be LeBron's final season, imagine how bad it would look if right after the finals, right after game 6 or whatever of the finals, LeBron James announces retirement after 23 seasons. And it's like, they wouldn't make him an all-star one more time like they did for Kobe. Now, Kobe, we knew that was Kobe's final year. But the previous couple of years prior to that, 2014 especially, 2014, God rest his soul, we all love Kobe. Kobe Bryant was voted to the All-Star game in 2014. He played 6 games that year. Like that was and I don't necessarily have a problem with it. That was an honorary, all he's done for the game, the championships, league MVP, one of the greatest scorers ever. The least we can do is give him an all-star spot. Okay. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was averaging 9 points a game his final season. He was an all-star. Michael Jordan's numbers, pretty comparable to what LeBron's picking up right now. All-star his final season, a couple of seasons. So just because, LeBron and Kawhi's been better than LeBron, let's kick LeBron out of what could potentially be his final All-Star game. How bad of a look that'd be for the NBA? For Adam Silver, it'd be like, gosh, indisputably a Mount Rushmore player, but more so than that, one of the great ambassador game. You will not find anybody who's put more, it sounds cliche, but blood, sweat, and tears in the game of basketball than LeBron James. I mean, there's a reason nobody's ever played 23 seasons. There's a reason at age 41, he's still averaging, 21 points and 6 assists and is shooting 50% for the field. He is still an excellent basketball player. Still an all-star caliber guy. So if you could put Kobe Bryant in 2014 when he played 6 basketball games that season, if you could put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1989, that'd have been 1989 when he averaged 9 points a game. If you can put Michael Jordan in his final All-Star game in 2003 when his numbers were pretty similar to LeBron's, I think you could put LeBron James in potentially for one final time. We don't know if this is it, but it's certainly not something that can be dismissed. LeBron playing his final season in the NBA in 2026. Again, my guess, Lakers go out in the first round in all likelihood, and this offseason he thinks about it, talks to his family, and ends up playing for the Cavs next year in his farewell tour. But there's also an element, Peyton Manning retired after 18 seasons. He was, of course, number 18. There'll also be kind of a cool, LeBron retired after 23 seasons, after becoming the first player to play 23 NBA seasons. There's a lot of things he'll consider. I think he wants to have one more run with his hometown team, who, by the way, they're not going to win the East this year, but next year, you had LeBron, you got, obviously, Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley and those guys. They could be a player in the East. Now, Tatum coming back to Boston. The Pistons aren't going anywhere. The Knicks, we'll see what they do depending on how they finish this year. The East will be much better next year than it is now if LeBron goes back to Cleveland. But it's still something I think he would consider. All right, last topic before we get out of here. It's unfortunately a tales all the time. And the worst kinds of people are those who just whine and moan and tell you about how bad things are without the first solution. Without certainly a realistic solution. Everybody thinks they can solve world peace until they're, president of the United States or whatever. The worst kinds of problems are those where there is legitimate, justifiable outrage, and we really don't know what the solution is. And that's what's going on in the NFL right now. So, of course, we had a shockingly high amount, 10 head coach, over a quarter of the league was open for business in terms of bringing in a new head coach. 10 coaches were hired. None of them were black. No African-American head coaches were hired. So that now leaves 3 currently. It's D'Amico Ryans with the Houston Texans. He's not going anywhere. He's a great coach. You've got, obviously, Todd Bowles for the Bucs. He's on the hot seat. And then you have Aaron Glenn with the New York Jets. He's definitely on the hot seat. So it's on the board that by week 17, D'Amico Ryans the last black coach left in the NFL. It's on the board. And so when you consider, the Rooney Rule, which God bless, the Rooney family for instituting this, the idea that you have to interview one minority head coach, in your hiring process, well-intentioned, it unfortunately has not helped at all. By and large, it hasn't helped at all. Because number one, when you have a 70% of NFL players are black, I think the high of black head coaches was 2017 at 7, not even a quarter of the league. When the Rooney Rule was instituted over 20 years ago, there were 3 black coaches in the NFL. There are now 3 black coaches in the NFL. And again, this goes back to what I said at the start of the segment. I don't know what the solution is. Because we know this about pro sports owners, particularly in the NFL. It is a good old boys club. And a lot of this goes to a perception aspect of it. Where it's, somebody like a Brian Flores, who was, after Stefanski was on the board, was my first pick to be the new head coach of Pittsburgh. It went Brian Flores and Nate Scheelhaus. I cannot believe Nate Shieldhouse didn't get a job. He probably will next year. Somebody like Brian Flores, you're kind of like Mike Tomlin. Man, motivator, can have those guys ready to go every Sunday. Not that great schematically. Now, by the way, Tomlin was not good schematically. I know that as a Steelers fan. But that perception going in feels like it's the case with owners. Whereas somebody like, Sean McVay, man, when it comes to play calling, this guy's a wizard. Now, McVay, I think, is a very, very good play caller. Most of McVay's greatness actually comes from motivation. I've said McVay's kind of like the perfect coach. Motivator, and he's good schematically. Usually get one or the other. Dan Campbell, great motivator. Not the best schematically, as we saw by the end of his 1 year. Lions fans are hoping 1 year as the play caller with the Detroit Lions the second half of this year. And so when there is that aspect of just that natural bias, and before anyone denies it, listen, I once had a sociology professor, freshman year. This is 4 years ago, freshman year of college. And she brought up the idea of bias into the equation. And of course, naturally, it's like, well, I'm not a racist or homophobic or sex. And she's like, everybody's got it in some form or fashion. She said, she was probably in her 60s. She said, if someone is passing you on the road, if someone, goes around you on the interstate, it's just flying by and you could tell, like, okay, that's a young person. Maybe it happens occasionally. Like, oh, those young people, that's implicit bias. I remember when the former First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, remember the controversy with Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese? Well, LSU won the national championship. They're going to the White House. And Dr. Jill Biden comes out like, well, maybe Iowa should also go to the White House. And there's that dynamic. Okay, LSU, mostly black team. Iowa, mostly white team. And it's not even necessarily malicious, but just did her implicit bias come into the equation with that? And so now you attach that to NFL owners, who we know some of the recent findings in those files over the weekend. Couple individuals who own NFL teams don't look the best right now, to say the very least. There's that good old boys aspect to it. There's that we identify with this guy, we relate to this guy. It's why most white people marry white people. Most black people marry black people. It's like when folks try to make this case, well, in this town, in this district, most of the crime committed is by black Americans. Yeah, that's probably because it's a mostly black district. Just the same as in a white district, if majority crimes probably committed by white people. Like, that's your proximity determines by and large who you're around. Not more so than it used to be because of the internet, because of social media. We're more connected. The world's more connected than it's ever been in the history of human civilization. But all of that going back to these NFL owners, they're mostly around rich white guys. And they mostly hire white GMs who mostly hire white coaches. The Rooney Rule, as good of an intention as there was with that being instituted over 20 years ago, when it was instituted, there were 3 black coaches. 2026, 3 black coaches. And it's not like there weren't good candidates. Brian Flores, Anthony Weaver, Nate Shieldhouse, like plenty of guys that had legit opportunities to get a job as the head man. And that's, by the way, for those that try to make this like, oh, you're saying they should hire people because they're black. No, just hire the best man for the job. Really? Are you telling me that of the 32 head coaches employed, only 3 black people, are qualified to be among those 32? Like, come on. Like, now we're being intellectually dishonest. And so when you see this, and by the way, I just talked about the Klint Kubiak. Some of these hires I really like. I would have preferred Brian Flores and certainly Nate Shieldhouse with my Pittsburgh Steelers over Mike McCarthy, but Mike's got a good track record. There are guys that, I think they'll work. But there's also the element of who was given legitimate opportunities. Like when you see every year during the hiring cycle, every January. So-and-so was interviewed for the, X job. And you're like, that's probably the only minority they're going to interview. And that person goes in knowing. It's kind of like when, to bring back Mike McCarthy again, it's kind of like when the Cowboys interviewed two people for the head coach job. They interviewed Marvin Lewis and Mike McCarthy. They knew who they were going to hire. They did. Like, Marvin Lewis had a 0% chance of getting the job in Dallas. I mean, they had McCarthy over at Jerry's house. Like, it was a whole thing. So it's a lot of it goes back to the good old boys club. A lot of it goes to implicit bias. And again, like, it's like I learned, years ago, like, everybody to some degree has it. Doesn't mean it's even malicious. Everybody's got it. Again, if somebody, what's a good example? If, okay, there's the whole thing about, Karens, right? Like, we hear about, oh, this Karen is yelling at people or is just a pain in the you-know-what. That would be like saying all middle-aged white women, they're all Karens, they're all insufferable. Well, that's not fair. That's an implicit bias there. Not even necessarily malicious, but there's an implicit bias there. So there you go. Patrick Brown. It's no different than what the Vikings did to their GM, fired him over paternity leave, which sounds suspicious. The paternity leave thing was weird. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, he can't be with his family for 2 weeks after they just had a kid. I didn't necessarily disagree with that firing, only a sense of A, no Pro Bowl was drafted in 4 years, and B, man, let Sam Darnold walk out of the building. And you see what he's doing now in Seattle. But again, the biggest thing, and Patrick has another comment. I'm shocked Jerry Jones hired a young black defensive coordinator in Christian Parker. It wasn't talked about today. I'm happy he's getting an opportunity. A lot of Cowboys fans are excited about that move. I'm sure he's an upgrade over Matt Eberflus. It's hard to not be worse than that, based on how bad the Cowboys defense was. Unfortunately, Christian Parker is working with a pretty bare cupboard. We'll see what the Cowboys do in the draft, maybe getting a Caleb Downs from Ohio State or an Orville Reese also from Ohio State. Like, we'll see what Dallas does in that regard. But yeah, I mean, it's why certain organizations, the Cowboys have never hired a black coach. The Giants, who've been around for a century, have never hired a black coach. But again, I think the Giants franchise has things a little bit, a lot more to worry about than just that. Let's put it that way. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Again, a little bit of a shorter show than usual. We'll be back on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. I don't think Giannis is dealt before the show on Wednesday. Again, the reporting is at the earliest late Wednesday night. Well, we're going live at 6 p.m. Eastern, so that doesn't count as late. I mean, it's still in the afternoon in certain parts of the country. At the same time, like I've said, I'll end the show with this. I am not getting my hopes up. I refuse to do it. I've been let down too many times by this front office. Not going to do it. But if it happens, if it happens, and in particular, if it happens in which Draymond is part of the deal, so that next year, wait a second, Jimmy Butler comes back from injury, Draymond comes back probably in a bench role for the Warriors. So you got Steph, Giannis, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green. Woo! It's a four-headed monster competing for the Western Conference next year. It's OKC, San Antonio, Denver, and the Golden State Warriors. But only time will tell. Again, deadline's Thursday at 3. A lot going on this week. Super Bowl stuff. We got NFL honors, Hall of Fame, MVP, all that. I won't get my hopes up. I won't do it. But I'm cautiously optimistic. And I'll end the show with that. Hope everybody has a great week. Please stay safe. Please stay warm out there, man. It's freaking freezing where I'm at and all over the country. Have a great week, everybody. See y'all on Wednesday. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And would you stop listening to a groundhog about whether it's going to be winter? Come on. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. And be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.